to this online service of Neshoba Unitarian Universalist Church. I am the Reverend Beth Lefever, privileged and delighted to be the minister of this congregation, and I'm so very glad that you have joined with us this morning. I am preaching to you, as you may have noticed, from our Neshoba pulpit this week. Thrilled to have so many of you present, albeit in less animated form than usual. You all, headed by that sneaky but gifted Nix Hill, presented me with the absolute best of all possible gifts, your photographs, which Nix, Gavin, and Becca painstakingly affixed to the chairs in the sanctuary, along with a sign reading, "We are still here." When Christy Hogan saw it, she thought we should record from here this week, with me in the pulpit, preaching to the congregation, sitting strangely still in the chairs. So that's what we're doing. And I can't tell you how pleased I am to be back. Also, happy Mother's Day to all of you who mother in one form or another, in all of the ways that mothering occurs in our world. Happy Mother's Day. Our opening words this morning are our 7 principles. We affirm and promote the following: the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. In the spirit of these cherished principles, let us be together in worship. And now Meganne Woodland will light our chalice and recite the words of our covenant.
Our chalice lighting today is written by the Reverend Dr. Linda Hart. We light this chalice as a symbol of the spark of life which abides within us. May it be as a light in a dark night, a light in a window that welcomes the weary traveler home. May it be as a light of a trusted friend that guides us along the path. May it be as the light in the face of one we love, bright with joy. And now, if you'll join me in the affirmation of our covenant, love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus, we do covenant with each other and with God.
In 1870, our Unitarian ancestor, Julia Ward Howe, worked to establish a Mother's Peace Day with an anti-war proclamation and rally cry. Over the years, Mother's Day has evolved to be more of a celebration of motherhood, often involving cards and flowers and brunch. In recent years, a movement led by strong families, of which the Unitarian Universalist Association is a part of, has been calling for an establishment of a Mama's Day, a day to honor all those who mother or nurture, especially those who are weighed down by the stigmas of our culture. We celebrate trans mamas, immigrant mamas, single mamas, lesbian mamas, young mamas, poor mamas, and others. Mama's Day is a time to celebrate the magic and heartbreak of being a mama. In the time of Corona, many mamas find themselves struggling to multitask and nurture with the restrictions of quarantine. It is a challenge to help our young ones understand why they must remain home. Many mamas are finding creative solutions to entertain, comfort, and inspire their children. And perhaps there are some of us who long to be nurtured by our mamas and cannot. Many of us have mamas in assisted care facilities where no visitors are allowed, or they are practicing safe distancing in their homes. It's a tough time for mamas and those who need their care. As part of the Mama's Day initiative, we also seek to center Black voices and experiences. And so I'd like to share with you a poem written by a Black mama, Reverend Kiama Rahman. Reverend Rahman was inspired to write this poem and prayer after she had a conversation with her own daughter in which she tried to comfort her by reminding her of the struggles of their ancestors for justice. The poem is entitled, "It Is That Time and That Place," and was most recently published in the anthology Becoming, a Spiritual Guide for Navigating Adulthood. Perhaps those of you who nurture and those of you who need nurturing will find inspiration in these words. My daughter was in her first year of law school in 2005 and called me in the middle of the night having a meltdown. It was one of those dark nights of the soul that we all experience, where we imagine that everyone else is smarter and prettier with more social skills and money than we possess. After I talked with her, reminding her of who she was and whose she was, I sat down and began to write some of what I said to her. Now is the time to call on the memories of the ancestors who thought they could not walk another step towards freedom, and yet they did. It is that time and place to call on the memories of the ancestors who, when the darkness of their lives threatened to take away the hope and light, reached a little deeper and prayed yet another prayer. It is that time and place to remember those who came through the long night to witness another sunrise. It is that time and place to remember the oceans of tears shed to deliver us to this time, to remember the bent knees and bowed backs, to remember the fervent voices asking, begging, and beseeching for loved ones sold off. Time to remember their laughter and joy, though they had far less and little reason for optimism, yet they stayed on the path towards a better day. Time to hold to the steadfast hands and hearts and prayers of the ancestors that have brought us this far. Time to make them proud and show them and ourselves what we are made of. Time to show them that their prayers and sacrifices and lives were not in vain and did not go unnoticed, nor have they been forgotten. Did you not know that this day would come? Did you not know that we would have to change places? Did you not know that just as our ancestors were delivered, that you would also be delivered? Have you not seen the greatness and power of the creative energy in the universe called God that moves and has its being through human agency? Have you not seen God in your neighbors' faces, in the homeless, in the battered women, the trafficked child, the undocumented worker, the dispossessed, It is that time and that place to know that it is our turn, that we must leave a legacy for our children and all the children. It is that time and that place. We are the ones we've been waiting for. For that, let us be eternally grateful. Amen, and blessed be. Happy Mama's Day.
Steve Goodier wrote, "But I give best when I give from that deeper place, when I give simply, freely, and generously, and sometimes for no particular reason. I give best when I give from my heart." It is time for our morning offering. As you are able, please give from that deeper place. Please give from your heart to help sustain our church. Methods of giving are on the graphic, and please know how grateful we are. Our reading this morning is the hymn, The Fire of Commitment, words by Mary Katherine Morn and Jason Shelton. From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. From the stories of our living brings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. Last week we discussed the 50th anniversary of Kent State, and most of you know without further description what the name Kent State means: the shooting by the National Guard of student protesters at a college campus. This week, we will discuss the far less known shooting of student protesters just 11 days after Kent State. This shooting took place at the historically black Jackson State College, now Jackson State University, just south of us in Jackson, Mississippi. 2 promising young black men were killed that day. 21-year-old Philip Lafayette Gibb, a junior pre-law major and married father of an 18-month-old son, and also 17-year-old James Earl Green, a high school senior who was walking home from work at a local grocery store. Green, a high school track star due to graduate just 2 weeks later, and who planned to attend UCLA, had hopes of running in the Olympics. His habit was to cut across Jackson State campus every night on his way home from work. In addition to these killings, 12 other students were wounded in the 28-second fusillade by some 40 Mississippi Highway Patrol officers called in, along with nearly as many local police units to contain the approximately 100 student protesters. This according to news reports. The officers reportedly began firing shotguns from within 50 to 100 feet of the students gathered in front of the 5-story women's dormitory, Alexander Hall. They claimed to have seen a sniper on one of the upper floors of the dormitory, but the FBI later could find no evidence of a sniper. Further, the President's Commission on Campus Unrest concluded, and I quote, that the 28-second fusillade from police officers was an unreasonable, unjustified overreaction. A broad barrage of gunfire in response to reported and unconfirmed sniper fire is never warranted, unquote. And one additional horrendous fact, ambulances were not called until after the officers picked up the shell casings, according to a U.S. Senate probe conducted by Senators Walter Mondale and Birch Bayh. This was ugly by any stretch of the imagination. But what I want to know is, well, wait. Let me tell you a bit more, again, according to news reports. The students at Jackson State had become disorderly. College campuses across the country were in turmoil over the expansion of the Vietnam War into Cambodia, and student strikes and protests were widespread. But racial tensions were also at play at Jackson State. A major thoroughfare, Lynch Street, divided the campus and led to the downtown area, where reports indicate frequent confrontations occurred between white and black residents of Jackson. That tension, plus the war and the draft, made for a combustible mix. And then, when a rumor started that Fayette, Mississippi Mayor Charles Evans, brother of slain civil rights leader Medgar Evans, and his wife had been shot and killed, emotions erupted, with the students throwing rocks on motorists, overturning vehicles, and setting fires. Firefighters were called to douse the flames, and they requested police backup. Officers quickly responded. It was after firefighters had left the scene that the police moved to break up the crowd congregated in front of the 5-story Alexander Hall. Reports say that every single window on that side of the dormitory was shattered by gunfire, and the pockmarks in the building are still shockingly visible today. What I want to know is why I did not hear of this shooting, at least in any detail, until years and even decades later. While it almost certainly made the news in northern Indiana 50 years ago, it was well dwarfed by the dramatic shootings at Kent State. But the Jackson State killings were at least equally heinous to the shootings at Kent State, and their tendrils more twisted and far-reaching. Their tendrils snaked up and down and around and through the ugly American heritage of racism. The ugly truth is, white lives mattered more to the white establishment, to the powers that be, and to the common person as well, than did the lives of people of color. So the white victims of Kent State got the major share of publicity, while the black victims of Jackson State were more seen as expendable, as part of an ongoing problem that took firm root in the civil rights struggles of the 1960s as part of something many people wished would simply go away. I think that is the case. I think that is why the publicity was so lopsided, at least as I now recall it. But to its credit, Jackson State itself did not downplay the horror, having memorialized the shootings by naming the area in which they occurred the Gibbs Green Plaza in honor of those killed, and marking it with a large monument in front of Alexander Hall. Incoming students learn of the awful events of that day at a mandatory orientation session, and professors often utilize those events as teaching tools in their classes. For the rest of us, however slow we may have been at seeing the truth, Black lives matter. For the rest of us, indoctrinated from birth perhaps with the belief that white people were superior, we have learned that that is not so, and Black lives matter. For the rest of us who may have once been the product of racism, we have learned, and Black lives matter. People of color matter. All people matter, and equally so. For the rest of us who ultimately embrace the only logical truth, the only ethical, moral, and religious truth that all lives matter, the killings at Jackson State trouble us, as they should. I hope I never cease being troubled by our history of racism, prejudice, and violence, the murder by police officers of 2 promising young Black students at a college campus just 3 hours south of us. I hope we never cease being troubled by hatred and being prompted by those feelings to struggle for good, to struggle for right, to struggle for love. May it be so, and amen. And now let us move into a time of meditation, reflection, and prayer. We are moved to tears by the unstinting capacity of the human heart to love grandly and gloriously, to create works of breathtaking art, to reach in so many ways ever further toward the beauty and wonder that is solidly at the core of transcendence, of all things good, of great and infinite mystery, of that than which nothing greater can be conceived, that which is larger than ourselves. We sob sometimes, so overwhelmed are we by the extent of the human capacity for kindness and courage and caring and joy and hope. And then again, we are horrified at our equally boundless capacity for brutality and greed, or for our own apathy in the face of unbridled brutality and greed and savagery and selfishness and hate. Who are we wonder, in the face of it all? Who are we who can care so much and so little, who can love so fully and hate so bitterly, who can hurt so cruelly and care so tenderly? Who are we, and what are we to do? What are we to do? Search as we may, we find no answers. There are no answers. So we must content ourselves slowly with the understanding that we are a complex species with fathomless depths of depravity and heights of goodness and morality and nobility. acknowledging the former and continuously nourishing and nurturing to fuller fruition the latter, so that our depths may be ever diminished and our heights ever made grander by the wonder and love so quietly and insistently ever present in the world. We must feed the good and starve the destructive, and surround ourselves as much as possible by others who are doing the same. And we must do the work of the just and the righteous, however alone we may feel, however insignificant we believe our efforts to be, for the world needs our effort. Let us take a moment to breathe into that effort, to breathe into the good, breathing in love, breathing out anger, breathing in peace, breathing out fear, breathing in hope, breathing out despair, breathing in understanding, breathing out heartache, breathing, breathing, breathing. Amen and amen.